You're gonna love these 10 DIY decor ideas for spring. Hey there, it's Christina from the DIYmommy.com. Spring is here. I'm so excited. Today I want to share with you 10 of my absolute favorite of all time spring themed DIY and decor ideas. So whether you want to infuse some more pastels, florals, or do a little bit of an outdoor inspired DIY project for the season, I hope you find some inspiration here. Let's get started. The first DIY I'm going to show you is how to make a tray from a shadow box. Now this is not my idea. This was one of my subscribers' ideas when she saw this shadow box, Hannah Hunt. So thank you, Hannah, for this idea, and I hope you love how this turned out. So this shadow box was only $5 at Hobby Lobby. I took the backing off and then I traced it onto this project paper that I found in the clearance aisle at Joann. I just love the floral print on this project paper, and then I put some Mod Podge onto the backing. It's just a chipboard or MDF sort of backing, and I just made sure to coat the entire thing, and then I smoothed the piece of project paper that I cut out right on top of that backing. Once that was completely dry, I took some more matte Mod Podge and I applied it to the top of the project paper. I made sure to go over the entire piece. And then once that was completely dry, I put the backing back in this shadow box frame. I put all of the tabs down and realized it was not going to be strong enough to be a tray. So I took some wood screws and my drill and I just screwed in all of the sides, so in the middle of each of the sides, and I put a screw in all the corners of the frame just to make sure that the backing was held down really nicely and it was attached firmly so that when I put things in my tray, it would not drop out. And this shadow box was on sale in the Hobby Lobby clearance aisle because it didn't have glass in it, which was perfect for this project. So thanks again, Hannah, for this idea. Then I took out the little hanging pieces on the back of this shadow box, and then I flipped it around. I found these pulls at Home Depot. They're only around $3 Canadian. They're in the utility hardware section, so you'll find them where you find things like hinges and garage elements and things like that. I like them because they look sort of industrial, but of course I love the beautiful brass color of them. Then I just measured where they were centered on either side of my tray, and I screwed them into the side of my tray with my drill and some screws. And I really love how these look with the feminine paper, and I like how they contrast with the driftwood color of this frame. So I put one handle on either side of my frame, and that was it. That's how I made this really simple tray from the shadow box, and it only cost me around $12. So this would be really cute for breakfast in bed. It's also cute just for random items on your coffee table, like a book, some florals, a napkin, and I think it would just be a really sweet part of your spring decor this year. And you could also use things like wrapping paper and scrapbook paper instead of this project paper. There's so many options. The next DIY I want to show you is a really sweet spring throw blanket. So I found this sweater knit fabric at Joann, and it wasn't very expensive. I believe it was only around $8 a yard. I folded it in half and then I folded it in half again and cut off any of the excess to make sure that it was nice and even. So the side that I cut off, the raw side, I'm going to fold it up an inch and then another inch. So I'm just using my ruler and some pins to fold it properly and then to pin it in place. So the selvage edge, I'm just going to leave that because that's not going to come unraveled. That's sort of finished in its own way. I'm just folding up either side where I cut. And when you're working with any sort of knit fabric, it's really important that you pin it lots because it's quite stretchy and can tend to move around a bit. Then I used my sewing machine and a zigzag stitch to sew my hem in place. So I'm using the fattest zigzag stitch, the widest zigzag stitch, and the longest length on my stitch here, and that's going to work well with my sweater knit fabric. And when you're sewing sweater knits, make sure not to pull on the fabric. You don't want it to stretch. You just kind of gently push it through your machine. And I think the hem turned out really nice. It looks substantial and it looks great for what I want to do here with it. I found this pom-pom yarn at Joann as well, and then I'm taking some more stick pins and marking every 2 inches along the hems that I made on either side of my blanket. Then I'm taking a needle and thread and I'm doubling the thread on my needle. I'm cutting off any excess string off of my first pom-pom on my yarn. And then I'm taking my needle and thread and I'm putting it through that hem that I created. And then I'm putting it through the middle of, kind of right in between two of the pom-poms, right through that string. Just like this. So you don't want to go under the string, you want to go kind of right through that string just to make sure that your pom-poms are nice and secure. So again, putting the needle all the way through, kind of in that hem that I created, pulling it out whenever I see a pin. And then I'm putting it in the middle of that string between the two pom-poms. So basically I'm just creating my own sort of pom-pom trim with this pom-pom yarn. Here's a close-up so you can see how I'm attaching this pom-pom yarn. So you're going to go along like this until you run out of thread and then make a nice loop and a nice knot, and then you can add on some more thread on your needle if you need to continue. So this is a bit time consuming, but you can do it while you're watching Netflix or whatever. It's quite relaxing, and I think the finished effect is very cute. And I only used maybe 1/4 to 1/3 of my ball of pom-pom yarn to make this, so it was a really good use of material, I thought. When you're finished at the end of your hem, just make a really firm knot, cut off any excess thread, and then cut off right at the edge of the pom-pom. Take out all your pins, repeat on the second side if you want, and you are finished your beautiful spring blanket. I love the soft blush color of this blanket. I really like the geometric pattern, and this DIY pom-pom trim takes the cake. I think it just brings it to a really sweet, cute level. It's nice and lightweight, but I think this would also work well into fall if you wish. So I took an embroidery hoop and I'm painting it with some leftover paint I had on hand in this beautiful blue, green, gray color. So I divided the hoop into the two parts and painted it. Once it was fully dry, I took this wired burlap ribbon, I believe this is 2-inch wide ribbon, and I'm putting it in between the two hoops and pulling it tight. And I'm putting it about 1/3 down from the top, then tightening my hoops together. And then I'm trimming off the excess, leaving about 2 inches extra on each side. And then I'm folding it in half and cutting it at an angle to create a cute little sort of pennant style edge on either side of the ribbon. I found this metal welcome sign at the Dollar Tree last fall. If you don't have something like this, you could just leave the words out or do something different there. I liked the look. And then I took some fabric flowers that I made. I will leave the tutorial for these fabric peonies in the description box below. It's one of my most favorite videos and most popular videos here on YouTube. They're really fun to make. If you don't want to make fabric flowers, you could just purchase some silk peonies or flowers, whichever flowers you want from your favorite store. And then I took this faux lamb's ear. I found this at Michael's a few years ago. I'm just trimming it with some wire cutters. I like groups of 3, so I put 3 flowers and 3 leaves on either side of the flowers, and I'm just gluing them in place with a glue gun. And just kind of experimenting and, looking at the wreath from different angles and deciding where I want to glue any more leaves. So I just tucked a couple single leaves on either side of the flowers in the interior of the hoop and the exterior. And just kind of kept looking at it and gluing and moving until I was happy with the final look of this wreath. As a finishing touch, I took some twine. I found this twine at Dollar Tree, very inexpensive. You can use it for so many things, and I'm just wrapping it around the top of this wreath. I wanted to hide that hardware on top that the embroidery hoop has, so I just took a glue gun, tacked the rope down, and I'm just wrapping it around the top of the wreath like this, and then gluing it in place at the end and trimming it. And here's how my spring hoop wreath turned out with the embroidery hoop and the fabric flowers. I think this looks romantic, it looks sweet, it has a little bit of a modern farmhouse look as well. It would look cute on your front door, and it would be a welcome addition to any spring home. For this DIY, we're going to start with 2 squares of fabric that are 20 inches wide by 20 inches long. I'm using some home decor fabric in this really pretty spring-like green and white plaid. Now take a sewing machine and sew along the perimeter of the squares, placing the 2 squares right sides together and using a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Leave a hole that's about 6 inches long. If you don't have a sewing machine, you can also use fabric glue or stitch by hand. Now we're going to make some tassels by wrapping some thrifted yarn around a piece of cardboard. This cardboard is about 6 inches long, and I'm wrapping the yarn around the cardboard about 50 times. Now carefully remove the rolled tassel, take another piece of yarn and tie it around the center of the tassel just like this. Then fold the yarn in half like this, take another piece of yarn and tie it about 1 inch from the top of the tassel. Do a double knot so it's nice and firm, and then cut the loops at the bottom of the tassel to create this shape. Now you're going to make 4 of these and attach them to all of the corners of your sewn pillow cover. You're going to attach them from the right side like this, pull them through, use a large yarn needle and tie them at the end. Repeat this for all corners of your pillow cover. Now turn your pillow cover right side out, stuff a pillow form inside. I always buy my pillow forms from IKEA, and then use a needle and thread and blind stitch the cover shut. To wash this cover, you can just put the whole thing in a washing machine on the hand wash setting and lay flat to dry. For this DIY, you're going to need a tote, some floral foam, some wire cutters, and a variety of different faux flowers. I'm using faux peonies, faux lavender, and tulips. I'll leave a link to some of my favorite faux flowers in the description box below. Place the floral foam inside of your tote. I found my tote at HomeSense. And then place your largest flowers inside of the floral foam and just kind of arrange them to your liking. I like to use generally odd numbers of flowers for my arrangements. So much better. You can cut the stems as you go to create taller and shorter peonies in this arrangement. Now place your medium-sized flowers inside of the arrangement. In my case, I'm using these beautiful pink tulips. Baby, dance the night away, I'll kick my shoes off if I want. Let yourself be free and maybe you will find that there is more to life. And then finally place your smallest flowers inside of the arrangement. I'm using these beautiful faux lavender pieces and tucking them inside of the rest of the flowers. So much better. Now you have a beautiful spring-like centerpiece that you can use for your table decor this season. We're going to make a lovely simple tulip wreath. I'm starting with this boxwood wreath base. I found this at Michael's a few years ago, and I found these faux tulips at the Dollar Tree. Cut the tulips at the stem with some wire cutters and place them inside of the boxwood wreath. You can actually push them right inside the wreath, especially if the wreath has a grapevine base. For this wreath, I'm using a variety of different colors of tulips, so I'm using some green, pink, and white, but you can use just one color if you want that look as well. Once you have the desired amount of tulips in your wreath, you can take some cotton ribbon. I'm using this black and white ribbon and tie it around the top of the wreath to create a really simple hanger. You can take another piece of the same ribbon, tie a bow like this, and attach it to the top of the wreath with a glue gun. Now you have a beautiful and simple tulip wreath for your front door this spring. I found these wooden rings at Dollarama and I spray painted them with just some white leftover spray paint, which is really hard to video, by the way. Then I found this pack of felt at Dollarama as well, such a great deal, and I took some white felt and I cut out some bunny ear shapes on it. I did use my Cricut Maker to cut out the shapes, and I have a free SVG file, or you can just use a pattern. I will leave a link to those free patterns in the description box below. Then once my rings were completely dry, I took my bunny ears, I folded them at the bottom like this, kind of gave them a little pinch, and used hot glue to secure that pinch. And then I glued the very bottom edge of the ear, and I placed it on the top of one of my wooden rings. Then I took a second bunny ear, did the same thing, so put a little bit of hot glue in the bottom center, pinched it at the bottom to give it the cute bunny ear shape, put some hot glue along the bottom edge, and glued that to the other side of my wooden ring. And that's it. That's all you have to do to create these really adorable Easter-inspired bunny napkin rings. So I made 5 of these for our whole family, and I think I'm going to use them for our Easter table this year. They are so cute. I love how they look with a really nice printed floral napkin. I found these ones at Simon's Canada, and they just add such a sweet little element to your Easter table this year. The next DIY I want to show you is an Easter bunny tray. I saw something like this at Pottery Barn. I found this tray and this bunny at Dollarama. I'm using the Super Unix glue. First of all, I'm making sure I wipe both the bunny's bottom and the tray and make sure they're nice and clean so everything sticks properly. And then I'm taking this Super Unix glue. I'm applying it to the bottom edge of my bunny, just like this. And then I'm just placing it on my tray where I want it. I kind of wanted it on the edge like this, and you can adjust it while the glue dries. Once the glue is dry, it is solid. I will leave a link to this glue in the description box below. I've just started using it and I'm really liking it for DIYs like this. And that's all. That's how simple this DIY is. I spent a few dollars and I think it looks just as good as something you would find at a store like Pottery Barn. You can use it to display Easter treats like these speckled jelly beans, or you could maybe do it like a veggie tray on your Easter celebration. There's so many options. You could also use it to display decor items as well. I am cutting 1-inch strips from my fabric. Again, I'm just doing that slit method and then ripping the strips. Now, these are some flour sack dish towels I found on Amazon last year, and they came in a really large pack, so I have a lot of these and wanted just to add some embellishment. I'm using Fabri-Tac fabric glue. You could sew these as well, but I wanted to make this DIY accessible for anyone, even if you don't want to sew. So what you do here is put a little strip of the fabric glue onto the bottom of the dish towel. I'm using the bottom hem as a guide. I'm lining up the bottom of my fabric strap with the top of the hem. And then place the fabric strip on top of the glue. And then every inch or so you can kind of create a little pleat like I'm doing here, and then tack the pleat down with a little dab of fabric glue. What I did is I put a hard ruler on top of the fabric strip so I could use it as a guide to see where I wanted my little pleats to go, and that was very helpful. This is a very casual, shabby chic boho sort of look. You don't have to worry about the straightness of this strip. It's kind of supposed to be very casual and relaxed looking. When you run out of fabric, you can add a new strip on just like this by tacking down the end of the first piece, folding a second piece, and then beginning your pleats at that point. I've used this fabric glue before. It washes very well, and so I'm not worried about using it on these dish towels. At the very end of the fabric row, you can tack it down with some more fabric glue. And here's how these boho chic dish towels turned out. They're so bright and cheerful, and I think they look so sweet in a spring kitchen. I love these speckle eggs from the Dollar Tree, as well as this mint colored ribbon. I'm cutting this ribbon into 8-inch sections and then tying it around this wire wreath form I also found at the Dollar Tree, of course, and I'm just cutting the ends of the ribbon into sort of a leaf shape. Or maybe these are bunny ears, I don't know. I just thought they were a sweet shape after I trimmed them. So just continue cutting your spool of wire like this and fold it randomly around the wire wreath form. So for this project, I just use 1 spool of this mint colored wired ribbon, and I'm tying it around randomly. Just kind of want to evenly spread out your tied ribbon pieces like I'm doing here. Next, I took my Dollar Tree eggs, and I'm using a hot glue gun and gluing them onto the wire wreath form. So my technique was just to use my glue gun and put the hot glue on the pieces of wire and then press my egg down and hold it until my glue was set. You kind of want to rotate your eggs back and forth, up and down, so that they fit nicely on the wire wreath. And don't worry if there's some holes showing, if you can see some of the wire wreath form underneath. We are going to take care of that in the next few steps of this wreath. So I really wanted to create something that was really textural, lots of texture, lots of color. I usually create more floral wreaths and just more understated wreaths. This one is a little more fun, but I really do like how it turned out. Next, I took this birdhouse I found at Dollar Tree, and I'm painting it with some leftover latex paint I had in this beautiful gray-green color. I'm just cutting off that top part with some scissors and then again using my hot glue gun and gluing it in place on my wreath. So I used 5 packs of Dollar Tree speckled eggs, and that was the perfect amount for this wire wreath form, and then putting that birdhouse. Now I'm going to make some pom-poms, so I took some Dollar Tree yarn. I'm wrapping it around my hand about 30 times like this, and then trimming it with some scissors. Then I just trimmed off a smaller piece of yarn, tied it around the center, just like I'm doing here. I'm just using a square knot to secure it, and then just trim all the loops like this to create a pom-pom. You can kind of fluff it up like I'm doing, and then I'm attaching it to some of the open parts of this wreath. So really anywhere that there's a space where you see the wire. I used about 5 or 6 pom-poms for this wreath. I just love the texture it adds, and they kind of remind me of bunny tails, which I think is a fun piece in this wreath here. Next, I'm taking some dollar store moss. So in this wreath, I used a couple different kinds. I love moss, and I think any natural element in a DIY is a good idea, and moss reminds me of spring especially. So use a couple different kinds of moss and a glue gun, and just glue the moss anywhere that you see holes in your wreath, anywhere that you see a wire form, and it just creates, again, more texture, more color, and it makes this egg wreath really interesting, I think. Don't forget to add moss to the sides of your wreath, so the inside and the outside, because if you're going to hang your wreath on the door, you're going to see those sides of your wreath as well. And here is the finished Dollar Tree egg wreath. I'm really happy with how this one turned out. There's so much texture and color. It's really fun, and I think it could work for spring or Easter for your door, or really anywhere in your home this year. I do like the little bits of ribbon, the bits of moss, and all of that beautiful pastel spring color. And it really was inexpensive. It hardly cost me anything because all the items were from the Dollar Tree. Thanks so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know down in those comments below which of these projects is your favorite. Are you going to try one? I'd love to know. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel for more DIY and decor ideas on a budget. I'm going to leave some more videos that I hope you will enjoy watching next right up here.